There are two ways to call Apex method in LWC. One of the methods is the wire decorator in LWC that we have discussed in one of our previous sessions. And today we are going to talk about the other approach, which is imperative way of calling Apex. So for that, I have created this one LWC component and one Apex class here. And then in this Apex class, I'm not doing much. It's just one Aura enabled method we have. And just like wire method, we need to create our Apex method should be public and it should be static and it has to be annotated with this Aura enabled annotation. But in wire method, it has to be cacheable to true. But here setting cacheable to true is an optional thing and it's not needed. Even though you can add it, it won't give you any runtime error, but if cacheable is not needed, if data caching is not needed, only then we should go with this approach. So it doesn't make any sense adding cacheable to true here. So we have this simple Aura enabled method which is returning list of accounts. And then to call this in LWC, what we need to do is we need to first import this, and for that we use our little snippet here, and we can just call the name of the class and name of our method. Usually I keep this name of the import and name of the method same, but this is a noun. It can be anything, but usually I just keep them same, but it is not required. So for that, like if we want to call this on our page load, what we can do is we can just have this connected callback hook here, and we can create a separate method, and in the separate method we can call it, and then we can call it from the connected callback, or we can just declare it in the connected callback. So this import statement that we have imported to call the Apex method, this returns a promise object. There is a concept in JavaScript known as promise. So this returns promise. So there are two ways to consume promise. There are two ways to consume promise. One of the ways is using then catch block, and other one is using async await. So we have two approaches if we want to call our Apex imperatively. So for that, I will create two JavaScript method, promise using then catch and promise using async await. So if we want to call our Apex method, it's not like any other method. We can just create a constant and create a variable here and then just call this method like this. We cannot do that if we are going to consume a promise. So if we are going to consume a promise, so if we write it this way, it will assign promise object to this result variable. We don't need that. We want the actual result which is coming from that promise. So this method returns a promise, and a promise returns what this method is returning, and currently this method returns a list of accounts. So to get the actual value from this Apex method, what we need to do is we need to follow this then catch syntax here to consume this promise, and for that, like, we can just use this dot notation and type then, and inside the parenthesis of then we can declare one arrow method, and it's a callback function, and I have explained what callbacks are in the previous session. So if you haven't checked that, do check that out. So here we need to pass one callback method, and this callback method will have one parameter. I'm just giving this a name as result. You could give any name here, and you can print it here using this result. Okay, so in arrow method syntax, if there is only one parameter, we don't need these round brackets here. So if there is only one parameter, we can just completely remove that. That is completely a legitimate thing to do. And then if during this process, if any error occurs, we have this catch block, and in the catch block also we are going to pass one callback method here, and we will just console log error. Okay, so to call this method during the page load, I will simply call this method in the connected callback. Okay, so let me just reload this page. So here you can see we are getting all the 13 records here. So this is one of the ways to consume promises. So this is to consume the promise using the then catch block. And there is one thing I wanted to highlight. Like usually when compiler reads the code, it goes line by line. So to understand this thing, I'll write one console log here. This is the start line, and this is the end line. So here, why I am printing this console, why I have added these console logs, because we are dealing here with asynchronous JavaScript. Right now, this Apex is synchronous, and this JavaScript is also synchronous, but this travel between Apex to JavaScript, this travel is asynchronous. So these methods that we have imported, they are coming to LWC asynchronously. So here when this connected callback will be called, our master thread will call this method, and then it is going to read this console log, and then when it reads this line, this is the asynchronous thing. So here we are writing, here we have wrote asynchronous JavaScript. So after reading this line, this will go to the, this would be ready for executing, this would be on the execution stack, and it would start executing, but our master thread won't wait for this to finish. It is going to read this next line, this line. So when we load this page, first we should see this console log, then we should see this console log, and after that it should print this result, because compiler is going to read this line, then this would go for the execution, but it won't wait for this execution to finish, because this process is asynchronous. This line is synchronous and this line is synchronous. So our master thread is gonna read this line first, put this for the execution, but won't wait for it to finish, and then gonna read this line. So now if I deploy this, let me reload this page. You see, first we got the start line, then we got the end line, and then we got the actual result. So if you want to do anything after you receive the results from this method, you have to write it in then block. You cannot write it here, because this is asynchronous and master thread won't wait for it to finish. It would just start the execution of this method, and then it's going to read this line, and then whenever we get the result, a separate thread would start, and that is going to print console log if the result is, if there is no error. If during this we get any error, then this catch block is going to handle those errors. So if you have any question, any confusion related to consuming promise using then catch block, then just do let me know or post it in the comment section. I will respond as soon as I can. So this is the one approach, using consuming promise using then catch block. Promise is a core JS concept, and the consumption of the promise using then catch block, this is a core JS concept. Async await, this is again a core JS thing. So in promise also there are two parts. One is the creation of the promise, other one is the consumption of the promise. Currently I'm not highlighting the creation part of the promise, because that would be off topic for today's session. So right now I'm just focusing on the consumption of the promise. So when we are importing any of the Apex method, this LWC framework creates one promise for us. We need not to create that. So this creation of the promise is taken care by the LWC framework, and we get the promise and we just consume it. Either we can consume it using the then block, or we can go with the async await. I usually prefer to use async await because to me it looks more cleaner way, but it's again up to you. If you feel like then catch is the better one, you can go with the then catch block. Both does the same thing. It's just a syntactic sugar. So here you know that if we want to call a method and assign some value that this method is returning, what we usually do is we just create one variable, give it a name result, and earlier that I have wrote it in this way, get accounts array. But as explained earlier, this won't work because this method immediately in synchronous processing, this method is going to return promise. So it will assign promise object to result, but we don't want that. We want the actual result which is coming from this Apex method. And to do that, we need to make this method asynchronous. So now this method is asynchronous, and for that, for now now compiler is going to read line by line. So when compiler is going to read this line, what is going to happen is it would put to the execution stack, but it won't wait for it to finish the processing. It won't wait for the asynchronous processing to finish. But if we want our compiler to wait until the asynchronous process is finished, we can write it await keyword. So the moment we add await keyword here, so now when compiler is going to read this code, our first master thread, when read it, so it will wait for this execution to finish. Or we can say the method master thread is going to finish here, and after that, once the asynchronous processing is done, another thread would start, and which would assign the output to this result keyword, result variable. So for that, what we can do is we can just have this console log, or I can just copy paste the console logs that I have in the above method. This is the start of the line, this is the end of the line, and this is the result. And to handle any errors during this Apex calling, what we need to do is we have to go with the try catch block. We can put this inside this try block, and then we can have this catch block. Catch block has this one method, and we can just simply print the console error. And okay, so let's just copy the results here. So now this will look like it is happening line by line, because first this console log would be logged to the console screen, and then this here, like once this method gets the result, only then this console log would be printed, and then this console log would be printed. So this is gonna go line by line. So in then catch block, if you want to do, once we get the data returned from this method, we have to do this in the then block. But here we could go follow the traditional thing, like we could go line by line, because compiler won't read the code written after these line until this asynchronous processing is finished. So let me deploy that, and in the connected callback, let's change, instead of calling this then catch method, let's call this Okay, so now I'm reloading this page. Now we get, this is the start line and we got the result, and this is the end line, line by line. So these are the two ways to consume promise in JavaScript. One of the approaches is this, using this then catch block, and the other one is this async await. I usually prefer async await. So in the coming sessions, you will see that I am using async await, but it's again completely up to you. If you feel like then catch block is more useful, then you can go with this then catch block, or otherwise you can use async await. It's totally up to you. So stay tuned for the next sessions. Thank you so much.